California, Mr. Bond.
Hey everybody, it's us again.
Hello.
Hello. It's To Live and Let Die in LA. So
The
hello
podcast.
everybody. Yeah, the podcast.
I always feel like Spaceballs when I say that.
The
Live and Let
podcast.
Die, the podcast. And
You
we
and
have a website now,
we do. I'm very happy
courtesy of
with it.
Neil. Neil put a lot of work into it and
Yeah.
launched yesterday. And now we
Yeah.
have Live and Let Die in LA, the website.
The website. It is, if you couldn't guess, it's www.toliveandletdieinla.com. So it's
Easy to remember.
pretty fairly simple. It'll give you links for going to the screenings. It also tells you our schedule for social meetups. Yeah, it breaks everything down. There's pictures of past events. I added a podcast segment, which I'll begin to put podcasts in there as well. So yeah, it's just a one-stop shop for our club.
Or I
So
was about to say it's your
yeah,
one-stop shop.
yeah. So
Everything is there.
people seem to like it, and I'm very happy about it. A lot of people have been reaching out, so thank you. So yeah,
Yeah, after it launched yesterday, I mean, like the response to it, I even noticed like within that hour,
yeah,
a lot of new follows on Instagram
yeah.
and new messages that we've been getting. So yeah, thank you guys.
It's funny. It's always funny to me that we live in LA, which is the film capital of the world, and there's been no real Bond stuff for a long time. So, which is one of
Yeah,
the most successful film franchises. So
yeah.
it's funny to me. But yeah, so
Without James Bond, uh, the one of the probably the biggest movie of the year that's opening next week wouldn't exist.
yeah,
Mission Impossible.
true,
The series, of course, we all know came out of Bond Mania in the
yeah.
60s, and young Tom Cruise was a fan. And you know, when Neil and I are the same age, so when we were seniors in high school, the first movie came out. And now we're pushing 50 years old.
Oh,
and the yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not there yet.
don't,
Okay,
don't let anybody tell me.
I'm not there
But
yet.
yeah, and then the next one's coming out like next week, and that's wild.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to
James Bond.
James Bond.
As my son asked me the other day, he was like, "Have you met James Bond?" And I said, "Yes." So you
You've
know,
seen him,
I
technically, yeah.
I yes, I have. So what else is on the agenda? The website.
And of course, the Living Daylights.
That is right. Sorry, that is our big thing. On
Yeah.
Tuesday, May 27th at 7 p.m. at the Culver Theater. We will have a 4K digital screening of The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton's first film, which I'm super psyched for. So,
Yeah, with a special guest too.
Richard Shankman, who is the father of Bond fandom, he came up with the idea for the very first Bond fan club
Yeah.
in 1974. Is that what it was? I
Yeah,
think.
it was 1974.
Yeah.
He was
And
only like 16 years old at the time, I
yeah,
think.
and his mom helped him, I read too. So he
Yeah.
did it in his family basement, and it went to like 1990, which I didn't even realize it went that long. So that's very
17
impressive.
issues of
Yeah.
bondage, and he did it all by himself. So that's, it's wow.
And if you read, I read past interviews with him. He eventually got introduced to Cubby Broccoli, and they were fine with. I mean, they liked him once they realized that this kid really actually cares. So, and then he got invited to the film set. So he came to Daylights and also License to Kill. So he's going to talk a bit about that. So, and
Sure, he's got some pretty fun
some
stories
memories
to
of
share
that.
with
Yeah.
everybody. I'm
Yeah.
looking
So
forward to that.
yeah, and also, I mean, he doesn't really do many talks, so I'm very happy he agreed. So I'm very
Yeah,
happy
and this
about
is
that.
great. And even outside of Bond, he's made some
Oh yeah.
fantastic movies. Like one of my favorite movies, The Pompadour of Love with John
Okay.
Cryer.
Oh yeah, he's a
It's
very
a
successful
great
writer and
movie.
producer
Yeah.
and director. So yeah,
So don't miss it. It's selling out. We've already
it's doing well.
yeah, the tickets that we've been selling for that's all the screenings, but that
Mhm.
specific screening is starting to get close.
Yeah.
So if you're planning on coming,
Do
don't
it now.
wait. Get it
Because
now.
I always tell people if you want this to go on and on and on, we need people to come. And Dr. No did great, and they're very happy with it. And it looks like Daylights is also on the path to doing fantastic. But if you want it to go on and on, the theater is willing to show them all.
Yeah.
We just need people to come each time. So
Yeah, show up.
yep. So
Yeah.
we are counting on you. So
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just, it's not just movies too. It's like Neil and I are working on, having like with Stephen J. Rubin and Dr. No, Richard Schenkman as our special guest for Living Daylights. And we have for Thunderball in July, one of the stars of the movie, Luciana
Yeah.
Paluzzi,
Very
the
impressive.
the legendary Fiona Volpe,
Yeah. I
Spectre
think
agent, is going to be
I
there
think she's
signing
one of
autographs. And
I think she's one of two surviving cast members from
yeah, I
Thunderball,
think
right?
it's just her and Martine
Nick
Beswick
Biswick, yeah.
that are
Yeah.
left. So yeah, it's very exciting. She's excited. She's excited to talk to everybody and tell
And she'll sign for
stories.
people too. So that'll be
Yeah,
cool.
she's going to be signing autographs, and that we'll talk about it more
Yeah,
when it
that's
gets
a couple
closer.
months from now,
But
but yeah.
that'll be for charity.
Yeah.
So it's all good stuff,
Yeah.
exciting stuff. And this is also too. It's not just for you, but it's also dependent on you guys
Mhm.
too. If you guys didn't come out and support us, like we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you, and,
Yeah.
and keep doing it.
The enthusiasm's been really great. So much so we know what will be showing in 2026.
Yeah, we already have
Yeah, so
that
it's
series picked out.
yeah, so yeah. So and we also our last meetup was a tribute to Richard Maybaum.
Mm-hmm.
We did a remembrance at his gravesite, and that went really well. We're going to put the video up for that relatively soon. There are pictures online that you can see, but it was very nice. I mean, it was a really,
Yeah.
I don't want to say fun, but it was a very uplifting thing and very positive. And
Yeah,
so,
and very inspiring too. And
yeah,
we had and some great folks from across the Bond community contributed. Like
wow,
AJ Chowdhury wrote a wonderful piece that we shared, and author Roland Hume, he spearheaded the Golden
yeah.
Bullet Awards. He helped us out, as well as Joe Darlington,
Joe Darlington
James
wrote
Bond,
something,
and
and
David
David
Zaritsky.
Zaritsky. Yeah, David.
Yep.
David actually spoke via well, it's right here. I have this small speaker, which is actually Stitch.
Oh, you got to show us this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So through a recording, I didn't have an external Wi-Fi speaker, but my son does. So I held this magical thing up, and
Thank you,
David spoke
Julian.
from that. So yeah, so there we go. But every everybody like donated their time, and thank you to everybody
Yeah.
though. So that was and also but also Stephen J. Rubin also uh
Yes,
contributed
that's
too.
right. He
So yeah,
contributed as well.
yeah. So thank you so much, people. We definitely appreciate that. So
Yeah, and again, we can't do stuff like this and have them be these sort of memorable, kind of intimate moments without support from
yeah,
everybody who loves the same stuff we do.
yeah. And the club is not just going to the film nights. We also have social nights as well. So we always encourage people to come for those as well. We always
Yeah,
definitely have a good time with good food and alcohol, which you can't,
yeah.
which is always fun. So, so
It wouldn't be a Bond event without a martini or two.
that is for sure.
So,
So,
and like our screenings, we always have, like for the Living Daylights, we're going to have the martini, of course, but there's going to
yeah,
be another themed drink. So you got to come to see
yeah,
what the drink will be. And
yeah. And after the screen, I actually mentioned this last time too, but we also all go out afterwards as well. There's a pub right down the street that we can all go to. So
yeah,
if you want to join us afterwards, once the film is done, please come out. It doesn't mean that it's over. So
yeah.
that's fun.
We always keep it going well into the night.
Yeah, it's a
And
good time.
also, and you don't feel obligated to, when you come out, and I got to see Steve and Neil, and say, if you want to say hi,
That's
but
fine.
you don't have to. We're not holding court or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So we're just there to be friendly and
We
and
are. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just saying, and to hopefully to that you guys just have a good time on your own.
Yeah,
If you want to see the movie or just come hang out, have a drink and stuff like that, it's all laid back. There's no membership fee or anything.
yeah,
It's, all you're paying for is your drinks or
yeah.
whatever and stuff like that.
We are happy to get new members, so if you want to give us your contact info, that would be great as well. But that's up to you. So
Yeah.
yeah. So we have another guest. Who is our special guest, Stephen?
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
Okay.
Our friend John Cox, one of the
Yeah.
preeminent Houdini experts
But
and
yeah,
authorities in the world, and also a James Bond Authority, and he's going to
Yeah.
be talking to us about the continuation novels. Neil has read some of them. I'm a babe in the woods when it comes to the continuation novels. I've read like one or two, really just scratched the surface. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to learning some things
Yeah.
and getting excited about a realm of Bond that I'm not familiar with. And if you guys aren't out there, hey, definitely stick around. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's definitely great. And it's we had fun, and there's some Bond tales told that I don't think have been told before from John, so it's going to be
Yeah.
really cool. So, all right, man. Enjoy.
Have fun, guys. Cheers.
Okay, hey everybody. Just wanted to hello, hello. Just wanted to introduce you to our illustrious guest, John Cox, who is stepping back into the world of Bond. He is actually one of the most preeminent Houdini experts out there, but not many people know that he is also just as passionate about James Bond and has a large history with that as well. So, John, thank you. We appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
Good seeing
Thanks,
you.
guys, for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Welcome, welcome.
Talking
welcome.
Bond. Talking
Um,
Bond instead of Houdini, which
I
is
know, right?
I've done lots of Houdini podcasts.
Yeah,
I don't think I've done a Bond one,
yeah.
except for actually we did a ranking with Brad Hansen.
Okay. Oh,
Oh, okay.
okay. Cool, cool. Yeah, I first met you through the Magic World. So, and then I actually found out that you were into James Bond way after that, and so we both like similar things. So, so
Yeah, did you know that, Steve? That Neil and I came to know each other through
Yeah,
the
he was
Magic World.
when actually I think it was the night that we had met at Moonraker. I was talking to Neil about it after, and he said, "Yeah, yeah, it's funny because I actually don't know him through James Bond. It's through Magic and
yeah,
with the work that Neil's been doing on with Doug the Doug Henning project and
yes,
everything." So, and it's I don't know too much about that stuff. I had some Blackstone books when I was a kid. You know,
yeah. Those are all great stuff.
some Blackstone Choose Your Own Adventure, and my cousin used to had the Blackstone like magic set. So we used to kind of like put on little magic shows for our parents and my aunt and uncle and stuff like that. And that's really as far as I go with with
Yeah,
magic. Because it's
Cool.
a fascinating world to me. So
yeah,
every time
definitely.
like Neil and when I'm reading some of your stuff too, it's always an education.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm this podcast, I'm going to be putty.
Well, we'll
Uh,
try to avoid the subject of
oh
Magic
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
No,
Houdini.
no, no, no,
But
no,
now
no.
we go to the magical world of James Bond. So there we go.
Ooh,
So
nice transition.
yeah, so John, let's just start with the first question. How did you find James Bond?
Well, um, for me, it really happened in three hits. The first Bond movie I ever saw was Diamonds Are Forever. I saw it on TV. It was the ABC World Television premiere, and I looked, and it's coming up on the 50th anniversary. This was September 1975. Now I was aware of Bond, though. I was aware of Live and Let Die, Man with a Golden Gun, but I'd never seen a Bond movie. That seemed kind of adult. And I was sleeping over at a friend's, and Diamonds Are Forever was on, and we watched it. And I remember, in the pre-title sequence, as soon as Connery comes walking out in his shirt sleeves, I thought, "Who's this guy? Who's this old guy? Where's that svelte guy in the safari suit that I remember from the cover of Man with a Golden Gun?" Oh, but I was kind of into Sherlock Holmes too, so I understood different actors played different character, the same character sometimes. But man, as soon as he pulled off that bikini top and wrapped it around that girl's neck, I'm like, whoa, this guy is cool. And the whole movie just blew my mind. I just thought it was fantastic. I vividly remember going to bed that night just thinking, I want to live in that world. I want to go back into that world. It was the whole world of the movie. But a month later, I see Houdini with Tony Curtis, and that sidetracks me. I become a Houdini nut. So, but Bond, but I know that I like Bond. I add it to the things I like. Okay, second hit, summer of 1977. Very good time to be a 12-year-old. Summer 1977, of course, it's all about Star Wars. And
Yeah.
I'm all about Star Wars. And if I'm going to see a movie, I'm going to see Star Wars again because that's what you did. But my stepfather, who was actually an editor, and he had very good taste in movie. You know, one weekend he said he wanted to bring me and my stepbrother. He said, "Let's go see the new Bond. Let's go see Spy Who Loved Me. I hear it's good." And I'm like, "Hey, we know Star Wars is good. You know, we could just go see Star Wars again." He said, "No, no, let's go see Spy Who Loved Me." So I went into Spy Who Loved Me saying to myself, I want to find fault with this movie because I want to be able to come out. It was a hit. It was a hit movie, and I sort of resented that anything was a hit that wasn't Star Wars. So I said, I'm going to find fault with this movie, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to explain to people why it's not as good as Star Wars. As soon as that parachute opened up with the Union Jack, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And once again, just bewitched me. I came out of that movie staring at the poster, that great peak poster, thinking, the whole world, I want to be in the world. But I still did not become a Bond fanatic. That happened sort of in a weird, slow way. I turned 16 at the end of 1980. So 1981, I've got my first car. I'm beginning to notice girls. Maybe dressing, clothes is something. And so I'm growing up. I'm becoming an adolescent, and I'm sort of looking to James Bond as a role model. So I'm like, yeah, I like James Bond. I may have gotten the Stephen J. Rubin book around this time, just to let's find out a little bit more about Bond. I knew For Your Eyes Only was in the works. I thought that was kind of cool that there's a new movie coming out. It looks a little different. And so I might have gotten a soundtrack. So I started kind of getting into Bond. I saw For Your Eyes Only. I didn't love For Your Eyes Only. I liked For Your Eyes Only. It didn't captivate. I didn't feel that it brought me into that special world of James Bond like the other ones did. But I thought the stunts were great. But I liked it. But what really got me was 1981 is the year of this book. John Gardner's License Renewed. This was news. This was big news that there was going to be a new James Bond book, the first new James Bond book, in over a decade. And so I added it to the list of things to check out. And I'm a reader anyways. And I read this book, and it just blew my mind. And it's why I like the books as much as the movies. It's such an internal experience. You're so inside of Bond's point of view. You're not seeing him drive a great car, which is cool. You're in the car, and there are paragraphs of description about the feeling of the leather and how he downshifted and touched the brakes as he slid into a corner. You're experiencing Bond. And that really, really knocked me out. I loved that. So I entered into the next few years, which were great years to be a Bond fan, a fan of James Bond in total. The movies, the books, the soundtracks. And, man, we had it good back then. You had a new book every year. A new book every year. A movie every 2 years. And even on the off year of a movie, you had all the news of the movie that was in production, and the fan clubs are going gangbusters, and there's the Battle of the Bonds. So, you're learning that, there's going to be 2 movies. So yeah, at that point, I'm a James Bond fanatic.
I have the Starlog, the Battle of the Bonds.
The Starlog. Yeah, we had Starlog. You had Bondage magazine. You had 007 magazine. There was no shortage of information, and everything was precious. And those Gardner books, in summer for special services, the next book comes out, and it was a good way into the book Bond, because I might have sampled. I found my stash of my dad's James Bond books. And I think I probably sampled. I think I remember sampling on Her Majesty's Secret Service. It was a little hard to get. It was a little too different at that point for someone that was really kind of weaned on the movies. Gardner was great because the Gardner books, even though they're books, they're not on the scale of movies. The elements are all there. He understands the elements. You got a villain, you got a henchman, you got a girl, you got a car, you got good locations. So it was I really understood it as a James Bond story, but then also as the specialness of it being a book. And Gardner was good about that. So kind of a long answer, but it
Oh.
was this three-way hit, and I realized it was the books that made me a fanatic.
So you read Gardner first before you dove into Fleming's books, then, right? You know,
I believe so. I think I
yeah,
might have sampled the
or
Fleming,
sampled. Yeah,
you know?
okay.
And then I started reading the Flemings
Mhm.
and loved them. Dr.
Yeah,
No had an interesting experience
it's
of
a great
reading
book.
Dr. No before I saw the movie.
Oh
Ooh,
wow.
but it's just
Yeah.
like Neil, right? You read the book before seeing the
Yeah, I
movie.
would read the books first, then watch all the films. So that's how when I was a kid. So that's how I would cross compare them and all
Yeah.
of that. So you know.
And I remember being disappointed by the movie. I thought,
Oh really?
yeah, I remember thinking,
Uh,
"Nah, it's not as good as the book. The book's
The
better.
squid.
It's good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's more
So eventually
fantastic
I
things.
read the Flemings and came to appreciate the Flemings and the whole deal.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty, yeah. I as far as cover to cover, I definitely read License Renewed before any Fleming book.
Mm.
Now Gardner he wrote well into the 90s, right? Into the 1990s, right? Like
96, he wrote
96. Okay.
14 original books and
Wow.
2 novelizations.
Wow. Okay.
Ooh.
What do you think are the other than License Renewed? What do you think are the highlights for you with him?
Um, well, they weren't all great.
Yeah. No. I've heard that. So,
But they're all good. They're all
yeah.
interesting. He was writing a book a year.
Hmm.
So at a certain point, he had to bring in his own passions
Hmm.
to kind of, clearly Gardner was into World War II. At a certain point, Bond is always fighting someone who wants
Yeah.
to be the next Führer. And there's a lot of, Bond is going and protect someone from a defunct World War II. A lot of World War II stuff. And that was a little less interesting to me. But so, you would go along and some books were good and some books weren't good. And then a few were just great. I love the first three, License Renewed, First Special Services, Icebreaker. Icebreaker was a tricky one because Icebreaker is the first book where Gardner is like, if I'm going to keep doing these,
Hmm.
I've got to make them my own. I've got to indulge my own interest. And so Icebreaker is about sort of a neo-Nazi group. Gardner starts doing something that anyone who's read the Gardner books will tell you it drives them crazy. It's the double cross and the triple crossing. Oh my, which I don't think has any place in a James Bond movie. I don't think there should ever be any
Yeah.
twists. Just play it straight, man.
Yeah.
But Gardner goes for the double cross and triple cross, and it really starts in Icebreaker. I remember not loving Icebreaker when it came out in '83, but on a reread, I decided, boy, this might be my favorite Gardner book. I think it's just dynamite, and it's so specifically about a place. It's Bond in a team that goes to the Arctic to investigate this guy who has his headquarters deep in the Arctic Circle, and they've got to train on snowmobiles, and it's really neat. I love a Bond book where it's as much about Bond in his location and in the environment. And Icebreaker, it's all about snow, baby. Um, and I've come to really appreciate it. And so it goes like that. Gardner, has a few books that are off, and then he'll have one that's dynamite. So
Are they on Fleming's timeline, or does he start from scratch?
he starts in the '80s,
Okay,
and that was a big part of License Renewed
Mhm.
was, and apparently Gardner, they talked about what should we do, and the decision was made, let's just pick him up from where he was left off by Fleming and drop him into the 1980s.
Okay.
And that's only 10, 12 years. It's
Yeah.
actually not that big of a leap.
Yeah.
And so, but at the time it was sort of thought daring. And as long as you don't do the math on his age,
Yeah.
it works just fine. It was still very much the same world. Still, Russia was sort of, the overriding enemy. And yeah. So it starts in the '80s, and he stays then within his own timeline, right
Okay.
up into the '90s. So they were contemporary when I read them, and it's fun to reread them now because it's like, wow, this is an '80s period piece now.
I guess if you were to go with Fleming's timeline in the 80s, Bond would be in his like 60s, right? I think, yeah, around there. So
Yeah, don't do the math. Wasn't he
Yeah.
born like 1927 or
I
something?
think so, yeah.
Charlie Higson worked it out and
Okay,
and
yeah.
kind of came down because he had to root him at a certain age at a certain time.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it has Bond born in like 1927 or something
All
like that.
right, cool.
Now I have to confess, both Neil and I have read Fleming. We know our Fleming. I myself am a baby when it comes to the continuation novels and the authors. I've read. I barely scratched the surface, honestly. So and I've heard in the periphery about like Gardner books and like the Raymond Benson books, and they have their fans, and one group of people will champion one over the other. And I guess my question is, with the continuation novels that you've read, and we can even use John Gardner as an example specifically, is he, because by the time he's doing the books, there's a long history of the movies, and it seems like when you read the books and then you see all these movies, yeah, they coexist together, but they're also completely separate entities. There weren't ejector seats in Aston Martins and Fleming or anything like that. So I guess my question is, what are the continuation novels more about? Are they more about continuing Fleming, or are they more about kind of maybe a mix of both? Are they trying to keep maybe just the spirit going and having, like I said, like a mix, or is it like, no, we're hardcore Fleming, we're doing Fleming's Bond?
That's a great question. It really depends on the author, and it depends on the book. Something like, I think a very underrated Bond continuation novel is the book Solo by William Boyd. That feels very much we're
I
continuing
read
the
that,
story
yeah.
of a character, and a character in his declining years. It's a really interesting book.
Yeah.
That book feels like we're more interested in the character of Fleming and who that character would be. I think it takes place in 1970 even.
Yeah, he turns like 45, right? I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's I love it.
Yeah.
I love Solo. The vast majority of the books find a balance. We're writing books here, so they are more internal adventures. They're a little bit smaller, but people like their Bond tropes, so we are going to work in all the elements. So most of them are a mix. License Renewed is a good example in that there's Boothroyd in Fleming, but he has a Q branch, a girl.
Oh yeah, I read.
Called Cute.
Yes,
I shouldn't have said it like that. I should have said it's a girl. That's fine, but her name is Cute.
Yes, I heard that. Yeah.
Cute. But she's sort of cool. She's sort of sexy, and Bond goes over to her place, and it's all tricked out with.
Oh wow.
That I think that's kind of awesome. If
Cute's one of the things about the Gardner books. One of
that's
the
awesome. If they did that in the movies, people would lose their freaking minds.
They won't do that.
He did some of that stuff. So yeah. So Q is female. He had a female Blofeld. Which has not been done yet. So he experimented a little bit, but it's a mix, and the best books I think are a successful mix. And then sometimes Gardner, just win his own way. The Man from Barbarossa is completely a John Gardner book. I've read it multiple times.
Wow.
And I still don't know what I'm reading. It's Bond. It's involved in a World War II type of trial situation about there was a massacre or something. But you read it and you think, you know what? Hey, we got a book a year, and it's neat when the author experiments. And not everything was a supervillain. Sometimes Bond just went on these very unique, interesting adventures. So. Yeah, I hope that's a good enough answer to your question, but it's depends on the author, depends on the book, but the vast majority find a successful balance. Raymond Benson, a master at that
great.
balance.
He's great.
I love my Gardner because I got a lot of nostalgia for Gardner. But I don't want people to think that I'm here to say, hey, you got to read the Gardner books.
Read them.
They're weird. They're some of them are very challenging. if you just wanna, hey, I want to read a Bond book, get a Benson, or one of the later books,
Yeah.
Anthony Horowitz or something, and then if you got the fever, dive into those Gardeners. There are some absolute gems, and then there are some that are just weird, but they'll have good stuff in them. You'll think that's a good bit.
Okay, weird. I have another question. Neil and I have brought this book up, and again, I don't know if it's a Gardner book. It's and because we're all Southern California, LA, the book where Bond goes to Disneyland, is that Gardner? Is that
I think it is, right?
Only bring flowers or don't bring flowers?
Never send flowers.
Never
Yeah,
send
it goes to
flowers.
Disneyland,
Yeah.
It's so funny. That's like the one thing people know about the Gardner book. Didn't it go to Disneyland?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's what I thought. Yeah.
Listen, it's great. It works. It actually isn't Disneyland. It's Disneyland Paris, or
Oh,
when
okay.
it was.
Oh,
it was
okay,
still
okay.
called Euro Disney.
Euro Disney, yeah.
Yeah.
At that time. And what the story is, I like Never Send Flowers.
Hmm.
Even though and my sense is that Gardner was influenced by, this is just my own take, is that he was very influenced by Silence of the Lambs, and he wanted to write a Bond horror book. Because the first part of the book, it's about a serial killer, which is weird in itself. Bond's investigating.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Yeah.
But it's about a serial killer, and he's trying to scare you. He's trying to write horror. There's lots of Bond felt a chill in his spine and stuff like that. I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is Gardner doing horror. He sort of abandons that, but he does something that not a lot that he didn't do often, and that was really created a good, vivid Fleming-esque villain. And the villain is David Dragonpole. And at some point, I think it was even Gardner who said, in my mind, I pictured Kenneth Branagh, who at that time was kind of the breakthrough. And what if Kenneth Branagh was a serial killer?
Oh, wow.
Great historian, Shakespearean actor, famous, but he's actually a serial killer. And he has this tremendous fetish for theatrical things and fantasy. He lives in this castle. And so Dragonpole's plan is to kill the royal family, Lady Di and the kids, when they're visiting Euro Disney. Of course, he would do that at Disneyland because he's got this weird fetish for the theatrical. Hence, the movie ends at Disneyland, which is right in the theme, because there's a whole thing with Bond and Dragonpole's castle, and it's all tricked out and theatrical. So kind of Bond is then sucked into the ultimate world of theatricality and innocence, but he knows there's a tremendous menace and a threat here. So
wow.
I think it's fine. Where there's it's like a paragraph, Disney cooperated and gave their blessing.
Oh, they did. Wow.
So Gardner
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, Gardner has a little passage where Bond the day before visits Disneyland to kind of scope it out. And, it's just it's a funny little pad where, Bond was impressed by it. Value for the money. I'm like, Fleming would never do that. There would be some wry observation of happy children, and, he never had a happy childhood. There would be a cynicism to it. There would be something. There would be value for the money, thought Bond.
I can't imagine, like, at the beginning of Majesties, when he's sitting on the beach and he's having those memories, it's this beach day is such a value for the family.
That's exactly exactly.
I think I read that Guy Hamilton when he was directing Diamonds Are Forever, he also came up with an idea that Bond would go to Disneyland. It didn't happen because they were concerned about like legal stuff. But I think he had that there'd be like a gunfight at, if it wasn't Disney, it would be some theme park. But it's a weird concept.
I've never heard that. I love that idea. As long as it comes out of the psyche of the villain, I'm a big believer in that the whole world should spring from the villain. And that great Bond movie is about Bond going into the villain's psyche. And as long as it springs from the psyche of the villain, I think it's just right. And it certainly does in Never Send Flowers.
Which leads me to my next question, which is so Bond bad guys in Gardner books, who are your favorites? And who do you think aren't that great?
I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you who I guess my favorite is. And it's a book that doesn't get a lot of love, but I've always loved it. It's called Broken Claw. And 1990. So this is well into his run. First of all, I love a Bond book where the villain's name is the title.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because it tells me, and I think Gardner was absolutely doing this, I'm going to build this story I'm going to build a villain first, a great villain, and then I'm going to build the story around him. And I think that's why I like it so much. So Broken Claw Lee, he's half Chinese and he's half Indian Blackfoot, I think.
Okay.
Which I'm sure is now offensive to both.
Yeah. It's not very PC.
But, hey, good old racism. We're right in Fleming's territory.
Yeah.
And he's this tall guy, and I think he has opposable thumbs or something.
Wow,
so
this is very un-PC in so many ways.
Yeah. But he's very much of his world and of his culture and all his plans and his tortures. It all comes out of this. And so Bond kind of falls into this world, and the climax of the book is wild. It's this whole Indian torture ordeal that Bond has to compete with Broken Claw. But I like Broken Claw because Broken Claw it's what I love most. It's like Goldfinger. It's like the villain is the centerpiece of the story, and Bond is just going deeper into his weird, perverted world. So I like Broken Claw.
Wow.
And I like them all. A lot of the books, the villains are sort of the Largo or Dominic Green types in that. Like I said, in the books, you're very much in Bond's head. And so the villain is often defined by what Bond is observing. And it's usually very intimate and small. And it's usually something that Bond is just noticing something disgusting about the man's nose is rotting right here, or this bead of sweat or something. Bond really, the characterizations come more from the sense of being with this person rather than the villain, killing a boardroom of gangsters or something. Because you stay so much in Bond's point of view in the book. So the villains usually aren't that big, but kind of their characteristics are very well defined. A great villain in one of Gardner's best books, Nobody Lives Forever. I should say this isn't a spoiler warning. His name. First of all, these books are sold. I'm not.
It's fine. You can spoil it. It's fine.
It's one of his best books. Nobody Lives Forever, 1986, I think. The villain of the previous book, Tamil Rahani, who was taken over Spectre. They have a whole fight in a blimp over Geneva, and Rahani parachutes away and gets away.
Oh wow!
So he's going to come back in the next book. But here's a cool thing. What you find out is when he parachuted to get away, he landed bad and he's paralyzed. So Rahani now is in this weird building on an island off of Key West. He's paralyzed and on kind of life support, but he's still calling the shots for Spectre and organized crime. And his only thing that he wants in life is Bond's head.
Okay.
So he puts a hit on Bond. Whoever brings me in my bed paralyzed, Bond's head, I'll give.
That's
whatever.
funny. Okay.
Oh, that's great. That's a cool
I love
setup.
the idea. Yeah, and so part of the book, a big part of the book, is Bond trying to figure out what people are always trying to kill me, but boy, a lot of people are trying to kill me now. And it's Bond going, into Key West and eventually, finding this paralyzed, grotesque man who has been calling the shots. Cool. And how Bond kills him is fabulous. But I love the idea of I've never loved the idea of young villains, and you can almost hear the studio notes. Oh, he's got to be young and strong because him and Juan got to fight in the end. No, they don't. That's for the henchmen.
Yeah,
I like villains should be old. They're not physical. They're just powerful. They have connections. They have money. They have all the things that a young man doesn't have. And this is kind of the ultimate expression of the villain who can't even move, yet he can still spin a web out.
Yeah,
and Bond penetrating that ultimate layer is really good. It's a good book. It's generally, I would say, among most people, their favorite Gardner book.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Have you seen?
It's such a classic setup. It kind of reminds me a little bit of how they set up the Man with the Golden Gun with the golden bullet and this famous assassin. He's coming after you, and that's such a classic. Like, here we go. This is the caper. I love that.
So those are some of the villains that I remember, and then there's a lot memorable that I don't.
Yeah,
but.
For the novelizations of the movies, were those? I'm curious because I didn't read those. I don't really read novelizations that much, but
I don't love novelizations.
Yeah, So were they
When I
like
was a
in
kid,
the?
I loved him. I had not
I used to read
specifically
some,
James
but
Bond, but I
not in a
had
long
a
time.
stack of. If I loved the movie, I
Yeah,
was such a voracious reader that I would find the novelization, like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
there's always
That
be like
book,
scenes they'd
I
add on.
forgot who
Yeah,
who wrote that, but the
Campbell Black.
characterization. Yes, yes.
I don't know how I know that.
that's very good,
No, but
John. There you
the
go.
second you said the name, I was like, yeah, that's the guy. The characterization of Indiana Jones in that book is so different
Oh, really?
than the way Harrison Ford plays it. I mean, it's the same character, but he's ruthless. He's not really charming. He's more of a shut up kind of guy.
You know, that's interesting because the novelizations typically are written while the movie is in
Yeah.
production.
Yeah.
So it is you can see an author having
It's
a
an earlier
different
draft.
interpretation
Yeah.
of
I even
the
remember
script.
Indy having a feather in his
What?
fedora because
Are you serious?
apparently in the original shooting script, Kasdan, I think it was Lawrence Kasdan's idea. He said, "Yeah, Indy's going to have this feather, and it's from some old event or something, if I remember correctly." And by the time they got to actually shooting the movie, Spielberg was like, "Yeah, get the feather out of there." It's just,
That wouldn't have
Bogart,
worked.
he's wearing it's like
That's a
Treasure of the
good
Sierra
call, Steven.
Madre. So having like that kind of sort of decoration was out, and apparently, because I was soaking all this stuff in. Apparently, the author was going off of a very early
Right.
Yeah,
draft,
basically
because
are
even
basement
some of the
drafts.
action sequences weren't even there. Even the comic book. I remember reading the comic book, not to be going on an Indiana Jones tangent,
Hey, we
but
can.
even like the comic book adaptation that Marvel did was pretty close to the novelization in that if I remember right, there's no fist fight at the Flying Wing. He just knocks somebody out and the guy goes, ah, and then a gun goes off and it hits a can and everything blows up and we got to get out of here. All that stuff was, I guess I have to watch the movie if I want to,
Yeah. That's interesting. Boy,
Yeah.
maybe I want to read that novelization. You know who's a big novelization
Quick
fan?
read.
Tarantino. And he talks a lot about that. He wanted to, he reads novelizations and sometimes they're very different. Sometimes they give new
Yeah.
insights and and sometimes they can be written by some interesting people.
Alan Dean Foster. I read a lot of his novelizations when I was a kid. Specifically, I remember when I was a freshman in high school, I read Alien 3.
Okay.
Because I was so disappointed in the movie and I saw that he was doing the novelization and I loved his work, the stuff that he did for like Star Wars and things, and then his own work. So I remember sitting in band class and reading it and going, this is so different, man. Why did they do this?
That's funny. So the Bond novelizations, were they in the movies world or were they in John Gardner's world? I mean, I'm curious.
He tried to have it both ways, and it's a very tricky thing. He novelized License to Kill.
Mm-hmm.
So in License to Kill, Felix getting eaten by sharks happens. That's the second time.
That's Live and Let Die. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He tries to
second time. Okay.
Yeah. So Felix is already missing limbs from a shark attack, and then it happens again. And like Bond couldn't believe it. No, it's not possible that it's happening again.
So is Felix all stumps at that point? I'm
yeah, I think so.
He's like the Black Knight in Monty Python.
Yeah.
So Gardner really he tries to do that in License to Kill, and then he gives up with Goldeneye, and he just does Goldeneye straight. Okay. Yeah. But if we're talking about Bond novelizations, the two primo novelizations are Christopher Wood's novelizations. The screenwriter of Spy Who Loved Me, or of Moonraker, Christopher Wood novelized The Spy Who Loved Me, and it's truly an original. It's truly a Bond novel, and it's fantastic. Moonraker not as fantastic, but Spy Who Loved Me, for many people, it's not.
I know it's popular. Yeah,
but it's one of the. It's one of the.
I read the Moonraker novelization when I was a kid.
Yeah. Spy Who Loved Me is worth. There's some neat differences, and it's very, very well written.
Yeah. Yeah, because the original. I mean, it's people know this, but the original Spy Who Loved Me book isn't the film, so he had free reign on that. So,
but by and large, I don't love the Bond novelizations. Because you're so much reading action, you're reading action. And again, I like the more internal, the better. It's like, don't describe, it's a helicopter chase or whatever. and this is what Christopher Wood does, put me in the action, put me in Bond in the action.
That's
So it's a
cool.
sensory experience. But, novelizations, it's a tricky gig. Raymond Benson did them too. You don't have
Yeah.
a lot of time to do them. And, authors, it is cool though that Ian Fleming Publications, Glidrose back in the day, always insisted that whoever was the reigning Bond
Yeah, that's
author
good.
at that time should do the novelization.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so they continued, they did that with Gardner, and then they continued with that with Benson.
Was there one for No Time to Die? I don't think they had a novelization of that.
No, and not even a tie-in edition.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish they would have done a novelization for the origin for the Craig, like Skyfall.
Yeah.
That would have been great. I mean, we really Casino Royale, they just reissued. So
Hmm.
really, it was Die Another Day that was the last novelization. But you
Hmm.
could always count on something with the books.
Yeah.
And then Casino Royale, at least we had a fresh edition of Casino Royale with the movie cover.
Hmm.
Quantum of Solace, they sort of came up with a new book called Quantum of Solace, where
Hmm.
they included the short story Quantum of Solace and 007 in
Yeah.
New York, which had never been published in a Bond book. So that was sort of
Yeah.
the tie-in to that movie, and then it was over. And it's too bad because I think it would have
Yeah.
been great. I miss
Skyfall would have been a great novelization.
That would have been great.
Skyfall would have been great.
That one specifically, and
Yeah.
Spectre would have been interesting to kind of, especially with the end and Blofeld and everything like that. That would have been. I would have been interested to hear some
Yeah.
inner thoughts, for that situation.
And I wonder why. I mean, it could just be that novelizations, I mean, they still exist, do
They
they?
do? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame that they didn't novelize.
Yeah.
Novelize.
I read a novelization of Spaceballs when I was a kid. Believe
I
it or
think
not.
I think I did
I'm
too.
not
I
kidding.
think I did. It was weird. I
They
read one
had
on
they
Gremlins
did
too.
everything, man.
Yeah, I did one on Gremlins too. I remember that, which was odd, but so I wanted to ask you. You can answer it or you don't have to, but so I mean, books have been revised. They've fixed them up. Well, I mean, to make them more PC. What do you think about that? What's your take on that?
Hate it. Don't do it. Don't
Yeah,
don't change Fleming.
Yeah,
Now, there
Especially
was
if he's
such
not
a-
around to say okay.
Yeah. Now, using the American version in the British editions, that's fine because Fleming approved of
Yeah.
that.
yeah,
And that is
But,
distracting.
but yeah, but don't touch,
Yeah.
no, you don't change a work of art. I've heard that was all blown way out of proportion. I've even heard that they
Yeah.
weren't changed, that
No.
it's let die, that it was blown out of proportion. And I'm waiting for the people that are like the hardcore. It's like, show me a list of what's changed.
yeah.
Out
'cause,
of curiosity, real quick, for Christmas I got my brother. He hadn't read any of the Fleming yet, and he started building a little, Bond corner in his apartment. And I said, "Well, let's get you some books." And of course, the new editions are the ones that you can get. And I got him Casino Royale because I had read right off of Ian Fleming Publications' own website that they said, yeah, there's been one or two changes in this and that, but the majority of the books are untouched and they're still the original editions. And they even mentioned specifically Casino Royale. They didn't lay a finger on. So, and I got him like a handful of the books and he started reading them and said, man, because I have the original original editions in Kindle form. So it's, everything warts and all is in there. And, we were doing some comparing back and forth and he said, man, it doesn't look like Live and Let Die has using the old American edition, but by and large, he's been going through them saying it doesn't look like they did anything really.
Yeah.
And people just lost their minds.
That made big news. I remember that. So
It was a story in the UK paper
Yeah.
that kind of started the fire, and I don't know. I don't know if actually, yeah. The last thing I ever heard was there weren't.
Yeah, I've read that too.
It was really Live and Let Die. It was restoring that text. But I don't know. But you got to leave a book as it was.
Yeah.
Other than John Gardner, what other of the continuation authors are you a fan of?
Well, I love them all. I love them all.
Okay.
I might be. I'm not here to like preach Gardner. It's just
Okay. No. Hey,
I
he's
think
one
I'm
of the main
unique.
ones.
I'm
Yeah.
unique in that I've actually read all the Gardners,
No,
and
he's
I
one of the
know
main
them
ones.
well.
Yeah.
Me and
Yeah.
Calvin Dyson. I love Calvin Dyson.
Oh, his
And
stuff is great.
Yeah.
did a whole read through.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm like, finally, I think he's the only other Bond fan who's ever actually read the books.
He
And
read
like,
them all
finally,
straight through.
someone appreciates Broken Claw.
Yeah.
And our opinions were pretty in sync. So but I love them all.
What do you think of the new stuff that they're
I think they
doing?
only got better. Benson's books are dynamite. Six
Benson's very
original
good.
books, 3 novelizations. Benson's books, he just
they're very
nails.
good.
Benson knows what he's doing. I really enjoy. Probably it might be my favorite continuation novel. High Time to Kill.
Mhm.
I think is just dynamite. The Young Bond series
Yeah, that was very popular.
incredible.
Yeah.
Charlie Higson's Young Bond series in particular.
Hmm.
Incredible. Blood Fever, his second book, is among the best continuation novels. You would never think that would work. It works incredibly well. I loved the Young Bond books, and I've enjoyed all the other ones. The Anthony Horowitz books, Trigger Mortis, it's another favorite book. I think that he just nailed it. And but the first continuation novel,
Colonel Sun, yeah.
Colonel Sun.
I've read that, yeah.
1967 or 1968.
Yeah. I think
so there, and I kind of the thing that kind of the dogma is, oh well, Colonel Sun was the best. Well, Colonel Sun. I think it's very overrated. I used to think
It's
much
okay.
more highly of it.
Yeah.
I recently reread it, and I'm like,
it's okay. Yeah.
you know what is good is 007, the authorized biography. Or James Bond, the authorized biography
by
of
John Pearson.
By John Pearson.
Yeah.
That book is dynamite. I love that book. And that was a continuation novel, but a strange one. 1973, but it's totally worth reading.
It doesn't. It takes the. It's like Bond is a real person, and it's his biography, right? Is that what it?
Yeah,
through all the novels, right? Yeah, it's like a run through of the novels. Sort of.
Yeah. The setup is that he's retired, he's in the Bahamas or something, or he's on leave, and a reporter comes to interview him, and it's Bond's life story.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that.
Read it. It's
I've heard the title, but I just thought it was more like a textbook kind of thing.
No, it's
wow,
it's great. And so you get his 2 missions that want him his 00, and they're great.
Hey.
And who's in the book? Is it Pussy Galore?
I think
One of the women, one of the Bond women is there with him in the Bahamas. So no, it's this really unique. Here's James Bond, 1973. Here's kind of the story of his life, and then at the end of the book, he goes off to Australia to deal with like the giant rat of Australia or something like that. And I'm like, where's that book?
That would have been nice.
But it was an anomaly. It was an odd book. I think it was done just by sort of a publisher got together with a writer and said, hey, let's do this. And just, reached out to Glidrose and say, you mind if we do this? And they're like, whatever, at that do whatever. And so it stands apart, but it's a very good read. Yeah. There's an incredible, it's a great story. There's a certain part to it that I love, and that Bond sort of hits the skids. And it tells the story, he'll have his big adventures, but between those adventures, there are periods of his life that aren't recorded. And there's at one point where he's kind of having money problems, and he has to get a job.
What?
and so he's working at a department store as a security guard.
What?
Just sort of fallen, and he decides, I got to get out of this trouble. I'm going to go to the casino, and I'm going to win some money. And he goes and loses huge. Because he doesn't have his nerve, he doesn't have his confidence, and it's sort of and so it
sounds like weird tangents there.
That's fascinating.
But I love the idea of that. And again, you're in Bond's head. It's like, I don't have my edge, I don't have my nerve. I'm there out of desperation, and I lose.
Yeah. What do you think of what Ian Fleming Publications is doing with, like, for example, Raymond Benson is coming back, but he's not doing a Bond story. He's doing Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
And they've got, there's a Q series. And I read the first Kim Sherwood book where James Bond is missing and all the 00s are going out looking for him. There's a lot of really cool references. It's I was talking about before, and this isn't a disparaging comment, but it was odd to me reading a Bond book without James Bond. He's very much a presence, but he's not there.
Yeah.
It was very strange. What do you think of doing that kind of Bond universe, but not focusing on James Bond.
Well, they can do it, and they've done it before. They've done it, the Moneypenny Diaries, Samantha Weinberg. Those were good books. I don't love spin-off books.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Raymond's book, though. Hook in the Eye. Raymond knows how to knows Bond, and I'm really looking forward to that book because it's Raymond Benson.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to even read the Q books. I'm just not into it. I'm not that into the James Bond universe that spin-off books do anything for me.
Yeah.
I want James Bond, and it's fine that they're doing this, but I really hope that they announce that there's a new James Bond book coming soon, because I think people are a little hostile towards these spin-off books because it feels like that's what we're getting instead.
Yeah.
And if we had if they announce Charlie Higson is writing new adult Bond movies, books, which should happen, he should write the movies too, frankly.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I would be so happy. But I would just like to know that, we're going to get a Bond book and we're going to do that. But right now, it's so every time there's news of a new spinoff novel, I'm like,
yeah.
I always get the emails from Employment Publications.
Oh, yeah, me too. I get them too.
Tomorrow, don't say anything.
Same.
Well, you're ready. And I'm like, please, Q.
The Q mystery.
But I'm sorry. I don't mean to trash the Q mysteries because they might be very good, and there's a place for this stuff. But I'm just an old purist. I just want my Bond books. I want to be in Bond's head. I want to be in his head in that car. I don't want to be.
I'm still on the fence about that. Where I love my Marvel and I grew up loving Star Wars, and we all love the same stuff. But at the same time, as much as I love Andor, I keep forgetting that it's on. Because before Andor, there was Skeleton Crew, and before that, there was another Star Wars show that I forgotten about. And then, and the same with Marvel, it's like, oh man, there's a movie in the theater, and I haven't seen this one yet. And I would hate for Bond to become a chore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of we got to watch all this stuff just to get to and. My fear too is that not with the books and the movies and with where the franchise is going to go is okay. There is going to be a new James Bond movie, but to get everybody excited, there's going to be an 8-part miniseries focusing on young Jack Wade, or it could be anything. And Edgar Wright is the one that pointed it out a couple of years ago, saying the reason why James Bond is still prestige and still, held in such high regard, when any kind of announcement, anytime any rumor happens, it makes the news and people go bananas over it. And it's because there isn't a TV show and another movie about Moneypenny and this, there's not the Bond universe because it's James Bond.
Yeah.
Focus is James
It's
Bond.
always been,
I don't want to judge because I haven't read a lot of it, but I'm just afraid that people are going to get tired of James Bond before we get James Bond.
I think that's the danger. I mean, look at Star Wars. My gosh, has there ever been an example of just a Rolls Royce brand just shit canned by over, just diluted?
It's too much.
And it's got to the point with me. I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, me too.
To the point now with me, I don't watch all the series. And even when I hear one is good, I'm like, I don't want to watch
I mean to watch it, but I just don't for some reason.
It's just, it's, and as far as a movie goes, it's just been diluted. And, Amazon is a content creator. So to them, it's not about not making of something, but we'll see. What I hope, I think would be cool would be to do period adaptations of the Fleming books.
Yeah, people talk about that. Yeah,
I think that would really be interesting and different enough, and kind of hitting at a different audience.
Yeah,
I've always
it'll work because they're doing. Have you heard the BBC radio dramas with Toby Stevens? And
I've sampled them. Yes,
they are fantastic, and they are adaptations of the book. They're period pieces, and they still sneak in some of the movie stuff, like Q. The late great Julian Sands played Q in the BBC.
I didn't know that.
Dramas, yeah. And as we know from the Fleming books, he never went to Q Branch, and Q never gave him. There was Q Branch, but there was a Boothroyd, but there wasn't a Q.
Yeah.
But in the radio dramas, they do great, faithful adaptations of Fleming's books. and they, like I said, they still sneak in some of the stuff from the movies that keeps that familiarity, and even the casting, like they did on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Joanna Lumley played Bunt.
Oh wow, that's
How
cool.
cool is
Bunt,
that?
which was just brilliant, and Ian McKellen is Goldfinger, and I mean it's great. Like
No.
they're the way they do it is fan. They just released Casino Royale
I'll have to check that
on
out.
the BB, and I listened to it, and it's great. It's great. So a mini series, or even like
A
if it's not a
prestige
theatrical
series.
release, but a side kind of.
And that feels like the
thing.
kind of thing that would be good on a streaming platform. It's like The Crown. It's prestige, period. Well done, well cast, faithful adaptation of Fleming's. It's it's a little. This is for an adult crowd. I think that would only help enhance. It would be like the books. The books exist in this universe, but they don't compete with the movies.
Okay.
So I think that could kind of. I would love that, but I'm hardly the target.
Are you in charge? No.
Yeah. I think that would totally work without.
I would watch that. I wouldn't
people-
want a Moneypenny series.
Yeah.
What do you want from James Bond? What tone do you want from the next film? If you had your
Light,
light, yeah,
light,
me too.
fun.
Yeah.
Fun, light and fun. I am done with grim and dramatic and depressing. Let's go back to space, kids.
It's weird.
Well, you're a big Moonraker
I remember
fan.
We had this discussion after that midnight screening of Moonraker at the Vista, where we were all saying, when this movie came out, people were going, "Man, this is ridiculous." But now that's kind of the world we live in.
Yeah.
Where, this.
I don't want to watch that.
It's not a far-fetched kind of thing anymore, and even doing something like Moonraker, because a Bond in other media and comic books and in some of the video games, he's gone back to space.
Yeah, I remember the video games.
Totally worked.
Nothing, and was it Nightfire where he went into space?
I think I didn't play it, but I think that was the
video
one,
games. I thought I'd like to see more of this. This is sort of cool. Anthony Horowitz last James Bond continuation novel at this point was With a Mind to Kill, and it's a great book and it's a great idea, and I had such post-traumatic stress from No Time to Die.
Oh, you told me that.
that With a Mind to Kill, it's a darker book, it's a tougher book. It sort of ends ambiguously. Maybe Bond is killed. I couldn't embrace or enjoy that book, even though I could recognize this is really well done. And he's doing something that I wanted to see Bond do for a long time, but I can't take dark anymore. I can't take dark. And so that it seeped into my enjoyment of the books, even though the books are darker and straighter and more serious. But it's just like, I'm not digging the darkness. I'm not digging the death,
It's interesting because we've been, our next screening in a couple of weeks is Living Daylights, and Neil and I have been kind of immersing ourselves in, all these Dalton interviews and things. And he even says from Everything or Nothing, what is it that got this series going? And, you got to go back and blah, blah, blah. And I agree with him. At the same time, though, sometimes I think what's going on in the world and what the world collectively is kind of putting up with, and watching and dealing with, kind of dictates our entertainment.
Yeah.
And like John, like you were saying, I myself too, maybe it won't be on the level of Spy Who Loved Me or Moonraker, but getting a little cheeky Bond who's enjoying the women a little more and enjoying the cocktails a little more, and hey, I like this car, and maybe give us a little frivolousness, give us some real escapism. Let us go on a vacation. Just bring us to somewhere,
And it's even maybe, it's the GoldenEye, the GoldenEye tone too. It's just
GoldenEye's dark too, but it's fun.
Deathly serious. It isn't frivolous, but it isn't deathly serious. It's very special. It's just you're in that special world of Bond that I could watch as a little kid in Diamonds Are Forever and just feel that world was extraordinary. It was special. It wasn't scary. It wasn't terribly threatening. It was exciting. It was exotic. And and
you had a hero that, hey, he's going to save us and everything's going to be okay at the end of the day because, like Lulu sang once, have no fear, James Bond is
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what I love. I mean, Roger's my favorite Bond. Is I don't need a tortured James Bond. I think the whole joke of it
Yeah.
is that he's rarely bothered by everything that's happening
Yeah.
to them, until the end. And then it's like, hey, I'm in a situation here, or I got to get Anya off that. Oh, there's a little emotional complication here, a little,
and
and it's
even
enough. It's enormous.
even in the
very
Mujaba
light
Club,
world.
when she goes many lady friends but married only once, and
Yeah.
he's like,
Oh, he gets bothered by it.
It's just that one quick instance, and it's Roger Moore, Mr. Hey, 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 and
Yeah.
he
Well,
brings it down to no, we don't go there.
And
Yeah.
it's the
Because-
one scene between them where
Yeah.
she learns that he killed it. And when this mission is over, I will kill you. That's a dramatic scene.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
that scene.
Yeah.
And we're right
Yeah.
back to him grinning at her as they're being lowered down. That's all to color the third act in a different way. Now it's the whole freaking movie. Every scene is a dramatic scene.
Blofeld is your brother.
What? A little. Oh, well, that is an emotional, complication that colors things and comes back. Spy Who Loved Me did it perfectly.
Yeah, that's very good.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service also very good.
Yeah.
And then you get into Skyfall, and Skyfall's brilliant, and Casino Royale.
Even like Octopussy had a little flashes of that when
Octopussy's great. I love that
when
film.
he meets
Love
Octopussy,
Octopussy.
and they do the whole scene where they just basically tell each other the short story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their connections. Yes, you allowed my father to have an honorable death, and their connection there is it's kind of it's a little, I don't want to say unsavory, but it's good and bad, but that connection is their chemistry is too perfect. It's undeniable. It's like, yeah, you had something to do with the death of my father, but I mean, come on, baby. Some of that's missing. And I know, like, my girlfriend hates James Bond, and her big thing is, well,
Your girlfriend hates James Bond, and yet
surprise.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is, the conception of or the idea that he's misogynist, and he slaps his women around, and I can tell her, yeah, you can count on, really, out of all these movies, you can count on one hand instances where that happens.
And they're all Connery movies.
And
well,
they're all-
one more.
Yeah,
One Roger Moore film. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
but it's funny though too, because when Connery does it, you say, "Oh my God, this guy means business." And when Roger Moore does it, you go, "Don't slap her around. What's the matter with you?" It's the whole vibe that the actor brings too.
And even Roger knew that. He knew that this.
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
work
like,
for
"This
Roger
isn't
Bond."
me."
He
And
kind of, yeah.
but the idea that James Bond likes women, and I might have death for breakfast, so let's have a little nya for dinner. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And Pierce Brosnan, the thing I love about the Brosnan era was that they really leaned into it.
Yeah.
Especially after Dalton was kind of a one-woman man, which is why my mom likes Timothy Dalton and his Bond. But Brosnan went right back to, oh no, I'm everything that moves.
Yeah.
And there's entertainment value in that, because it's not, hey, this is the way to live. It's wouldn't this be fun?
Yeah.
I feel like it's okay as long as the woman is throwing herself at Bond.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes.
Connery
say-
raping the girl in the steam bath. That's not good, man.
A little
No.
Hey, the
coercion is never
hotel.
cool.
Anything at all, Mr. Bond? It's like,
No.
Yeah.
she started it.
Yeah.
So, because we were talking about The Living Daylights, John, you had a tale that you wanted to tell about the premiere that you were hesitant on, but I want to know it. So, if
I've
you
not
don't
heard
mind,
this.
Have I never told you this story?
no,
I have
no.
not heard this.
If you could,
I'll tell it. I was
Okay.
reluctant. I don't want this to sound braggy, and it's a tale of dumb luck.
okay,
That has never
that's great.
I've never been blessed with such dumb luck again.
Okay,
But it's just, one of the incredible things that happened to Bond fans. So here's the story. First
Great.
of all, I'm going to come to Living Daylights.
great, awesome, good.
I'm looking forward to seeing that with an
Oh, it's
audience.
gonna be great.
It's gonna be fun.
It isn't a favorite James Bond movie of mine,
It's
but
just fun.
I've got wonderful memories of when
The opening sequence is great.
I love
Yeah.
Dalton now. It's and the John Barry score. So I got a lot of fond feelings for Daylights, which all goes back to this. So this is 1987. 1987, right?
Yep.
I'm in my 20s and I am a hardcore Bond fan.
Hmm.
Hardcore. And this is an exciting time because it's
Hmm.
like, whoa, it was inconceivable that there would ever be another James Bond. It's like
Hmm.
there was Connery and there was Roger, and it seemed like Roger was Bond forever. And so it was really interesting this time of transition. And Timothy Dalton, I
Mhm.
like the looks of him. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm really into it. And I thought I'd love to go to the premiere in London. I wonder what it takes to do that. And somehow I was able to find out that what it takes is that the Prince's Trust hosts these premieres. And so I get the number of the Prince's Trust in London and I
Oh
call
wow.
up the Prince's Trust and I say, hey, I would love to come to the premiere, the royal premiere of The Living Daylights. Is that doable? And they said, yes. We'll send you, they called it an application. We'll send you an application in the mail. And it's
Wow.
really just a matter of buying a ticket, an expensive ticket, $100 or something back then. And so I'm like, great. And so I get it in the mail, I get the application, and I write my check and I send it off. And I start making plans for my first trip to London. I'm going to go to the royal premiere of The Living Daylights. This is going to be great. Well, I've got all my plans and I'm waiting for my tickets to arrive, and they've not arrived. And I finally called back the Prince's Trust and I said, hey, I sent in my application and I haven't got my tickets yet. And they're like, oh, we didn't get anything.
Oh.
And obviously, and the premiere sold out. And I'm like,
Ew.
oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed. I've planned this whole trip. I'm leaving tomorrow. Ah, boy. And they're like, well, you know what? You're one person, right? I said, yeah. And they said, well, come see us. Come see us when you get to London.
Okay.
So I take off
Promising.
to London, not knowing if I'm going to go see this or not.
It's crazy.
So I go there. So I go to London. I go to the offices of the Princess Trust, and they take me aside and they're like, okay, so we got you a ticket, and it's a pretty good ticket. Now, even though English people are understated,
Yeah.
for them to say it's a pretty good ticket, I'm like, oh, really? And she said, yes. I kid you not. I was sitting in the royal box. Charles, Diana,
What?
Timothy Dalton, Cubby Broccoli.
Wow.
I haven't been in England for 72 hours,
I would
and
have blown
I'm
up.
in the royal
Yeah,
box
I would
with
have
the
passed
royals.
out, exploded.
Boom, boom, boom. We stand, the entire theater turns and sings God Save the Queen.
That's right towards you.
I couldn't
And
believe
did you bow? Yeah.
I couldn't believe what was happening to me.
I would just
What an incredible way to see The Living Daylights. It was funny because so it's kind of up on the balcony of the Odeon, and it's kind of the
mm,
center little area that's marked off. And I was sitting next to a couple, um, an older couple. Everyone's wearing tuxedos. I remember them saying their names were we're the Humbards. I don't know if it was Humbards.
Humbards.
In my mind, it's like and they're kind of looking at me. This American, this young American. I'm in my 20s, my early 20s. And they're kind of looking at me, hello, and I'm like, hi, howdy. And they're like, oh, we're the Humbards. What's your name? And I'm like, I'm John. And they're like, oh, what's your last name? And then I suddenly realized, oh, I gotta tone it way down. I'm like, whoa, it's John Cox, and the Prince's Trust is something I believe he does great work, doesn't he, Charles? Oh, yes, yes, yes. So I realized, okay, I gotta calm down and get with the program here. I'm now among the royals, and then
Wow.
and I met Timothy Dalton afterwards.
I was wondering, I was
We're
gonna ask
totally
that. Oh, wow.
isolated in this area. I like to think that I was the first civilian to ever talk to him right after The Living Daylights, because he kind of came out and he smoked. He was a smoker.
Mm.
And he was lighting up a cigarette. And when I went up to him and I said, hey, I really enjoyed the movie. And I shook his hand and I accidentally shook his lighter. And he said, oh, sorry. And he took it out and he shook my hand. He said,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Thank you so much. So I'm like,
So
I'm the first civilian to ever compliment
Nice.
Timothy Dalton after the
Nice.
movie. So that was my incredible premiere story. I did
That's
it
a-
again.
that's-
I went
that's
back
impressive.
for
Great
License
story,
to
man.
Kill.
What a
Yeah.
memory.
I went back for License to Kill. I did not score a ticket in
Oh.
the Royal Circle. I sat with the commoners.
Okay.
And, but so it wasn't quite the same experience.
Hey,
But
one
yeah,
night with royalty is, man, ooh.
I was close enough to Princess Diana. I could have grabbed her hair.
Did they speak with
Oh,
you or no? Did the
The
Royals speak with?
Royals?
Yeah, probably not. No, I didn't think so. I just wanted to ask, but
No, no, we were all in. You go in there and everyone is in and seated before, and then they come
oh,
in.
then they walk in.
Last
Okay,
people
oh,
in,
okay,
they come down, and then they fill the front row. And it's Charles, Diana, Timothy Dalton, Cubby Broccoli, kind of
and
the
you.
whole thing in the front in the front row. I was probably more rows back than
Oh,
I remember,
still,
but I
yeah.
feel like I was only like 4 rows back.
no,
I
man,
was sit there and
right
look at him,
there. That's
looking at,
nuts.
Timothy Dalton was sitting right next to her, and they're just sort of talking and laughing, and
Wow,
it was it was amazing.
that's a
So,
pretty good tale right there.
and it's one of the reasons I want to go to the screening. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I want to kind of, I had that experience, and now I want to have it complete, flash forward to so many years later and have
yeah.
a different experience with that same movie, and now see that movie in a different way. But I
Well,
still
this will
Yeah.
be
love it.
the digital projection will be in 4K. It's going to look fantastic. So it's
Yeah.
because we saw Doctor No that way, and there were things that I had. I mean, I've seen that film tons of times, and there were details that I hadn't seen before that you can see, like people holding papers and what the paper says. It's pretty
Names
cool.
on books on
Yeah,
shelves, like
yeah, yeah,
obsolete English. What the hell is that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it should be great. I mean, I like that film more. I mean, I love License to Kill because it's so tightly wound. But Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton is really great, and he's like dark but lighter, and it's just
Yeah.
it's really fun. So I mean, that was
Yeah,
my special
I
request.
I enjoy it too. I enjoy it too.
Yeah,
I
and it's
love
rarely screened, so that's
Yeah,
pretty
it
good.
is. It is rarely screened. That was nice.
And
Also,
we got a fun
Little
pre-show
Kill.
too. There's some interesting clips that Neil and I found
Yeah, it's gonna be
that
fun.
should be entertaining.
Yeah. Well, John, this was great. I really appreciate it. You really were a wonderful guest, so thank
Thank
you.
you so much. It was a lot
Yeah,
of fun.
yeah. Is
Sure.
there
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Do you have any final thoughts on the future of James Bond? Anything that you would like to say?
It's a weird time.
Yeah,
As far as the books go, I think we're in great shape with
yeah,
books. I just let's hear an announcement of a new book. Fingers crossed that Charlie
yeah.
Higson wrote that
Oh, the Prince
special
Charles book.
book.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Or
Yeah,
His
King Charles.
Majesty's.
Yeah.
knocks it out of the park.
Hmm.
And it's this incredible seller. And it's like, there you go. James
Yeah.
Bond by Charlie Higson. Those two should
Yeah.
just come together. So I would love to hear that Charlie Higson is writing
Hmm.
another James Bond book. But I'd just like to hear that there's a new Bond book. And you know what? It's going to happen. Ian Fleming Publications, they're great and they're doing gangbuster work.
Yeah.
The movies, I've been through this. I've been through, after License to Kill, which at the time I didn't love at all. I thought they had gone off the rails. I like
It's
it much better now, but
yeah.
I really thought, boy, this is not the James Bond that I fell in love with. And then not long after License to Kill, there was this article in Variety that Cubby Broccoli was selling the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
read that.
I grieved. I said, well, it ended and it's over, and whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. So I sort of grieved the end of Bond and went on. And then when GoldenEye rolled around, I remember thinking it's going to be whatever it's going to be. It's a modern movie. I don't know if it'll be, for me
Mhm.
anymore, but hey, I'll go see it. And then, when I went and saw it, I'm like, oh my God, it was a James Bond movie. It was a
Yeah.
James Bond movie. It grabs me in that way that those early movies did.
Yeah.
So I've been through this process of grieving of seeing
Mhm.
up the end. I hated No Time to Die.
Yeah.
And at the time I really did not love License to Kill. So I'm sort of in that same spot where I'm like, I
Okay.
think we're in a bad place, and there's changes coming, and I'm hoping it will be the same thing with GoldenEye, where I
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
thrilled and it will rekindle the magic. And one thing's good about this sale is that we're going to get a new movie soon. I mean,
Yeah.
I was
That was
really
my very
thinking,
first
I
thought.
don't think
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make a movie. So we're going to get a
Yeah.
new movie. Hopefully, we'll have a new book. Hopefully,
Yeah.
a new series of books, and
Mhm.
I will continue. I kind of toyed with the idea of shutting down my blog. I have a blog, The Book Bond.
The Book Bond, which is a wonderful blog. So
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of I don't update it that often anymore. I more just kind of keep track on
Mm.
what's new. And I almost thought to myself, Barbara sold Bond, and Corinne Turner, who had run IFP for so long, and I was buddies with, she is now stepping down.
Yeah.
It's like maybe I should sign off at this point too. Maybe I've done this long enough. Bond for me is kind of changing. It's becoming more of a nostalgic fandom. I'm not really that into following every new development. I'm more about enjoying the past. But then I said, yeah, no, because there's going to be a book announcement, and
there's always something new.
yeah. It's so I'll stick in there. I'll stick around for a while. Who knows? Maybe they'll start doing novelizations again. Come on, Amazon.
I know.
Movies and novelizations, and all is forgiven.
Plenty of writers out there to hire.
I think Amazon is going to milk this for all they can.
Amazon, I love. Give me. I always wanted this during the Craig years. I'm like, why aren't they knocking off paperback like they do with Star Wars? Paperback Bond adventures. Stick Craig on the cover, a cool painting, and just give me a bunch of paperbacks adventures.
Jeff Marshall to do all these really cool posters for the paperbacks and stuff. It'd be amazing.
I would love that. I've always thought they should just do that and release them in paperback. That doesn't have to be a prestige thing. Just knock them out. We'll do a bunch of adventures, get a bunch of authors. I would collect those like crazy. There you go, Amazon. Another idea.
Well, let's call them up then.
Perfect.
Let's see, problem solved. So there we go. Well,
we
John,
know a few writers that would be perfect for it. So.
Well, John, thank you. I appreciate your insights. It was really fun. I had a super good time here. So thank you.
And very educational for someone like me who I have very scant surface knowledge of.
I've read some, but not
novels,
but not as much as you. So, so there we go. All right, guys. Well, thank you. Until next time, then. So there you go. Thank you.